Great. Thanks. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Nate Ivey. I am one of the co-chairs of the Cali District Innovation Hub. Cali is a California Environmental Literacy Initiative, and we'll talk a little bit more about the structure. We're thrilled to have you joining us from around the state today. I'm going to go ahead and open up my slides and share a screen just to help keep me organized and on track. We do have folks in the chat helping to monitor and pay attention to questions. So if something comes up for you and you need a hand, something's not clear, you need something, just please do advocate for yourself in the chat. So we're thrilled to have you today. As I mentioned, California Environmental Literacy Initiative is, through the District Innovation Hub, hosting a series of monthly webinars. And this is the first webinar in a series. Our topic today is looking at one district's journey to becoming a green ribbon school district. We'll gain some inspiration from that. And we'll also learn about some resources that are available statewide and in different regions of the state to help districts move forward with similar initiatives. So I'm Nate. I work in Fremont Unified School District, where I'm an instructional coach, and I volunteer with the California Environmental Literacy Initiative as a co-chair for the District Innovation Hub. Our agenda ambitious today. We'll spend some time in the beginning getting connected. I think one of the really important parts of this work and one of the goals of the District Innovation Hub is to help build connections and build a community around the state. So we do want to provide a moment of connection here at the beginning. We'll learn a little bit about the Green Ribbon Schools program through the California Department of Education and US Department of Education. And then the star of the show today is Rialto Unified School District, just sharing their amazing, inspirational, aspirational journey and their incredible and innovative practices that I think can inspire all of us with some actions we might take or some goals we might set for ourselves in our districts around the state. Then we'll spend some time learning about a variety of resources that are available, some current opportunities, and some really quickly upcoming grant opportunities that might support your efforts. We'll have a moment of time at the very end for some Q&A for the whole group, but what we'd like to do is, end up the presentation part of this within about an hour, and then have an optional half hour starting at about 5:05, where we can do some breakout rooms. So if you wanted to talk more to George from California Department of Education about Green Ribbon Schools, or you want to talk more to Juanita from Rialto Unified School District about their programs, or Seaberry from NOAA about the grants from the federal government, there'd be some opportunities for some smaller breakout rooms if you were interested in that. So an ambitious agenda, and we are going to just get it moving with the first part, which is some welcome and connections. So Amy is going to drop into the chat a link to a Padlet. And at the bottom right-hand corner of the Padlet, you'll see a plus button, which will allow you to drop a marker on the map of California showing where you are joining us from. You'll have a chance to edit that and just say who you are and a little bit about who you represent or what you're working on. So this is what the Padlet looks like. And you can see you can add by just dragging a marker onto the Padlet. So take a second, make sure your Padlet is open. And that you're kind of ready to do that. And I'll figure out how to delete this one that I dropped in the ocean in a minute. So everybody got the link, hopefully has it open. And what we'd like to do is, while you're kind of, putting yourself on the map, metaphorically, we'd like to give you a chance just to get connected and learn a little bit more about a couple of other people who are in this call. So we're going to create some breakout rooms. There'll be a couple of people in your breakout room, some really basic, straightforward questions: your name, your organization, your role, where you're located, and what's an environmental issue that's really important to your school or area. When you think about your community, what are some of the opportunities that exist in your community, or what are some of the challenges environmentally that you think are really important to address through the schools? So Amy's opened up the breakout rooms. Please feel free to join one. And we'll see you back in 5 minutes. All right, let us know if you're having any trouble joining a breakout room. Amy can move you in, but you should see a link and an invitation to join a room. Hi, welcome. I know a couple of people are just joining us. We are going into some breakout rooms to just get to know a couple of other people in the network. But it's always a delight to see the smiles on people's faces as they come back in from having made a connection. This can be difficult work. It's often isolating. Sometimes you might be the only person in your school or your community or on your campus or in your district who's doing this work, or you might have a team but feel like you're pushing uphill. So I think it's really important that we build the community so that you have a chance to talk to and learn from other people who are walking some portion of a similar journey. So thank you for taking a minute and getting to know each other a little bit. So to help you get to know a little bit more about the District Innovation Hub in Cali, Cali again is California Environmental Literacy Initiative. The purpose of Cali is to increase impactful environment-based learning for all K-12 students. And one of the ways that Cali does that is through a collective impact approach organized around a number of different innovation hubs that are trying to collect and share best practices in different domains that really result in students having access to these opportunities. So one of the hubs is a district innovation hub, thinking of districts as the unit of change, where there's a big opportunity to kind of organize resources across a system that can really help students connect to the environment and gain agency in thinking about environmental challenges. So in our District Innovation Hub, we have a number of goals. One is to build community, and we spend a moment doing that. Another is to curate and share environmental literacy and sustainability resources. Those might be like kind of print resources or approaches that might show up in a library. Another is to build capacity for district planning, and one of our future webinars is going to talk specifically about leadership and how to develop some plans. But today, I think our session will really hit this goal number 4, which is to cultivate, support, and showcase leading edge exemplars. And Rialto is a fantastic example, as you'll see in a few moments. So that's a little bit about the District Innovation Hub. Across Cali, I think we're really mindful that different people enter this work in different places. People might tackle it by coming up with a lesson or trying to tackle one challenge like recycling in their district. But to get really scaled and impactful change in your district, it really requires a systems approach. There's a number of systems approaches that are popular around California. The Green Ribbon Schools program with its 3 pillars, the Green Schools National Network, thinking about the intersection of leadership, culture and climate, curriculum, and facilities, or the San Mateo County Office of Ed, the 4 Cs, thinking about campus, curriculum, community, and culture, and the way that all of those play an important role in creating a system where students can connect to nature, gain agency, connect with the environment, and make a difference in the world around them. All right, so let me, sorry. As we go today, we're gonna kind of rapid fire share a bunch of ideas with you. So in the chat, Amy's going to share a Jamboard. Here's what the Jamboard looks like live. It's organized into the different presenters today in the different kind of categories. So as you're listening today, if a question comes up for you that you want to make sure gets addressed later or that you don't want to lose, you can either make a note to yourself, you can put it in the chat, or you can click on one of these post-its, you can edit the post-it, and you can write your question. You can also add new post-its and choose the appropriate color. So if you're unfamiliar with Jamboard, just a quick orientation there. So you might want to have that open and useful to you as we go today. Okay, so to get us kind of launched into Rialto's journey of becoming a Green Ribbon school district, we thought it'd be really useful to start with a brief introduction of what a Green Ribbon school district is. And we're thrilled today to have George Garcia, the education programs consultant from the California Department of Education, who manages California's Green Ribbon Schools program. George, thrilled to have you today. Thanks for joining us. And yeah, tell us a little bit about Green Ribbon Schools.
Thanks, Nate. Nice to see everybody here today. Some familiar faces I see out there. Those of you that don't know about the Green Ribbon Schools Award, it is a federal award that honors sustainability and environmental literacy and staff and student wellness in an award similar to the Blue Ribbon, but the Blue Ribbon could be academic. This is focused explicitly on sustainability and environmental literacy and its whole program design. So when we talk about this, it's not usually just one person who's a champion at your school. It starts there, but it usually becomes several people who come together from different parts of your school, district, and different areas that need to come together to talk about everything in conservation of water, waste, electricity, alternate transportation, nutrition, and indoor air quality, and anything that has to do with curriculum. So it's everything. It's the whole school design, whole system design of sustainability. So this award was a federal award that California decided to have a state award to accompany because California is so large. The federal award itself will only allow you to recognize 5 in the state each year. And that's not going to work for California. Every year we have about 40 or 50 applicants that we would have to send away or send home just because they're not top 5. So what the state award allows is for there to be a system and kind of a leveled approach to it. Applicants aren't competing with each other except for those 5 top spots for a federal nomination. They're only competing with themselves and their self from last year. So there is a bronze level that starts at 55% achievement on the application. It's a 100-point application, so 55 points. And then 65 to 75 is silver, and 75 and above is gold. And so really, most applicants look at it as a place to start and self-assess, because there's a lot of stuff you don't know until you open the box of what sustainability looks like across a school or district. So in the case of many of the schools and districts who apply, they'll apply and then reapply. And I always urge anyone that can hear my voice to reach out to me after their first year of applying, because I can go through your application with you and give you tips and tricks of the next steps for you to grow, and maybe even connect you with the right people to network you with the right resources. So because there's no competition and there's no real money attached to it, I can do that without any problem. There's no conflict there. And really, most of the time, it's an ongoing process. It takes a few years to get to the top because there is a lot to do. But please, my email address is in the presentation. It's shared everywhere. I'll put it in the chat. If you have questions about the award or the application process or supporting you because you've already applied, please reach out. I'm here for you. And as you can see on the screen here, the 3 pillars are conservation and resources, health and wellness, and health and performance, and environmental literacy. If you have even one of those under your hat, I'd say apply early, reach out to the people that you do not, that in the areas you don't have expertise, and then build like a team around that, and then bring me into the conversation as soon as possible, and I'll help you. So today, it's my honor to be able to introduce a school district who's been in the Green Ribbon Schools program for a while now. The district's been honored. Several other schools, if not all, almost all of their schools have been honored with the award, and they all have unique stories. And a person that's central to a lot of that work is Juanita here, who is pictured here. So I'm going to pass it on to Juanita because I'm in awe of everything that she says, and I'd rather say less than have her say more. So please help me welcoming Juanita.
George, you are amazing. And I can't emphasize what he's saying enough. When he says that he is, an advocate, he's super helpful. He'll help you to help guide you through the process. That's 100% accurate. He's been so helpful. Great to work with. We've had lots of questions over the years, and he's always there to kind of guide us through. So we appreciate that. So my name is Juanita Chan-Roden, and I'm the agent for science and career programs for Rialto Unified School District. And I love that we started off with that map because I feel like the map is like hugely important. It's an important part of our story. So a little bit bit about Rialto. We service about 25,000 students. Of those students, 1 in 3 are English language learners. We have about 80% of our population is considered low socioeconomic status. 77% are Hispanic Latinx students, and then 12% are African American. We are in the Inland Empire, woo woo, IE. The IE is interesting because we're an hour away from all the amazing naturescapes, right? An hour away from the mountains, an hour away from the ocean, an hour away from the desert. But that's like, where does that put us? That puts us like right in the middle of this really weird, like riparian ecosystem that just has like low growing shrubs. We were talking about learning about our, native plants and animals. It's like, what do we have? We've got the kangaroo rat. We have the desert sands fly. We have some low growing shrubs. So when we start talking about like, what do we need to save in Rialto? It's like rats and flies. Yes, let's do this. But it's a great place for us to really emphasize kind of learning about where you are and loving where you are. So there's a thing where it's like bloom where you're planted, and that's where we are. And we have to love it, because if everybody felt like, well, my area is really not that great, then we wouldn't have the kind of conservation and sustainability ideas that we really need. So I have about 20 minutes. I am going to talk kind of fast and furious. We have some really strong beliefs in Rialto, and one of them has to do with Rialto kindness. And our definition of kindness is really that it's the personification of honorable and compassionate service to others. We try and emphasize that in everything that we do. And how can you be kind if you're not kind to yourself and you're not kind to your mother, right? Like, love your mother, love Mother Earth. We also focus on equity, and the equity pieces go into like our population. Typically, we find that conservation efforts, that environmental literacy efforts, that climate efforts, you don't find those things in areas like ours, because we have lots of things that we could emphasize, like like literacy, basic numeracy, just making sure that our kids are competitive. All those things are, competing for attention in schools. And so how do we get like green initiatives, climate, environment, even on the radar? And we really lean heavily on this equity piece. And so we think that equity is really achieved when all students, staff, and families are acknowledged, accepted, and valued, and have the needed support and encouragement to take personal responsibility to realize their highest aspirations. And environmental factors impact the health and wellness of the kids in our community. And actually, when you're looking at the data, it actually, like, environmental issues can take years off of students and families' lives if we don't teach them how to properly navigate them. So going on to my next slide here. I wanted to, again, emphasize the pillars of Green Ribbon, because Green Ribbon really allowed us to kind of coalesce some ideas that we were kind of working on in a variety of different places, but it allowed us to bring it together. So those pillars of reducing environmental impacts and improving the health, and then really thinking about effective environmental education, caused us, go ahead and switch the slide, to change the way that we were speaking as a district. Our district language shifted, and the board, we encouraged the board to create a resolution, and that resolution was along those 3 pillars: reducing environmental impact, or at least negative environmental impact from the way that the school itself was run, really rethinking that, improving the wellness of our entire community, and then focusing on that sustainability education. We did that by rediscovering our community history and our community heritage. So of course, we've got lots of diverse, families, and diverse, a very diverse community, but a community is really a place in space and time. So while everybody has this diversity from where they used to come from, we're all here right now. And so what used to be here, we found some really interesting examples of what community looked like in the early 19th or 20th century. 1914, we could see that when we stopped to look, the students, these are students in Rialto Unified. Actually, this field is like literally where I'm sitting right now. There's a building here now, but that's where that was. And the students in Rialto used to grow all their own food. That was a really interesting thing that we learned. 1942, right in the middle, or right before, I don't know, I'm not a history buff, but World War II was happening around here. So this was the Victory Garden that they were emphasizing. And then 1955, again, we have like this rich agricultural history. And while we don't have a large agricultural industry here right now, it's important for us to remember that. And we learned all those pieces moving forward. in 2015, when we really focused on a California Math and Science Partnership Grant. In the California Math and Science Partnership Grant that was called, we called it RI Smart, which didn't sound that smart when you said it, but it was amazing. It was an emphasis on really teaching science in a place-based format. And as we were doing this, as we were doing the planning for this, it was Rialto integrating science, math, and related technologies. As we were doing the research for this, we picked local issues for project-based learning. And it just so happened that all of those issues were environment-based issues. One of them that was really strong had to do with the fact that we lived in a food desert. The second one had to do with the fact that we had some real water issues, which, you know, we still have really big water issues, but we had a big water contamination issue as well as being coupled with drought. And so we brought together cadres of elementary, middle school, and high school science teachers, and we really started learning a whole bunch about our community. Most of the teachers in our community actually commute in. They don't live in Rialto anymore. And so because they commuted in and they commuted out, they really didn't know anything about that shared community set of values. And so by spending some time, we called them summer staycations, by spending some time so that they could learn about it, we learned as a whole community. Every single department in our district learned a lot. And we brought that learning back to the students, and the students learned a whole lot too. And it kind of sparked this idea of like, hey, somebody brought back the idea of green ribbon schools, and that helped us coalesce some of those bigger ideas. Go ahead. With the camp's funding, the person that I was supposed to do this presentation with, his name is Brian Montez. I love Brian so much. And actually, there's another person from our district here on the call. His name is Thomas Vosta. And so I want to give him a shout out because he works super hard too. He was a part of camps at that time. And everybody that was involved kind of took a little piece of it and brought it back to their site, and it really spawned something. So we had the teachers learn about water, and we brought in the water bills from the schools, and the teachers were really surprised that about the different uses, the different amounts, how different the water bills were from site to site, which led to a conversation about geology in our particular area. And it also led to a lot of PBL projects at the school sites. Brian was the no gardens guy. He was the ground supervisor. He still is the ground supervisor. When people have tried to do things in the past, he's the guy that says, no, we're not doing that. It's extra work for my guys. It's extra work for grounds. We're not getting involved in that. We brought him in as an expert to talk about the water use. And then when the kids did their PBL projects, he came as an expert in order to talk to the kids about the water use. And the kids pitched all these water conservation ideas to him. And he slowly over time started recognizing that, hey, maybe there is something to this. We sent him to the Green School Summit to further indoctrinate him. And he came back, he met an individual named Sharon Danks, who wrote a book called Asphalt to Ecosystems, which I really highly recommend as well. And over time, he recognized that schools play this really vital role in how communities are kind of developed. He took it upon himself to write a whole bunch of grants and turf rebates. And this started what he was calling his quasi-centennial. It was the 125th anniversary of Rialto Unified. And so he started this Heritage Grove project in conjunction with the students. He was able to fund that project through these grants and through these turf rebates. And slowly over time, what that's led to is over 6 acres of trees being planted in the district, millions of dollars in water savings. Go ahead and click through. It really caused us to rethink how campus spaces were used just in general. And so this one came from Mr. Vosta's school. He was super instrumental at Morris, who also run the Gold Green Ribbon Schools Award, really bringing students into the conversation about what kind of efficacy do you have over your local spaces, and how are we using this space, and how would it better be used? So these brick little container boxes previously just had like the regular ornamental flowers, and Vosta started the Adopt a Garden program, and kids really had an opportunity to see that their actions had a direct effect on their school. When they see that, they recognize that they can change the world. Go ahead. And I think that that's really the power of the Green Ribbon Schools program, is that you don't start the Green Ribbon Schools application really just to win an award. You start the Green Ribbon Schools program because it helps you to solidify the ideas in your own mind about how your organization can change the world. And that requires a little bit of grit because there's a lot of people in the organization. And that's what I think George was alluding to when he said, start it off in this first year and it becomes a journey for you. And over time, you can see how what it is that you're doing is really making an impact. And not just you, it's not just you. I think the beauty of the Green Ribbon Schools Award is that it allowed us to bring light to something that was happening in the classrooms and out in the yards, to the school board, to the superintendent, to all of the, families, because when you win that award, there's a communication effort that goes out that helps you to communicate to the larger community. And you need all those pieces in order to keep an initiative going, in order to get some traction. The school year goes by so fast. Go ahead and click through. So we added outdoor learning labs, gardens, and groves to all 19 elementary schools. We have 5 middle schools. We have 3 comprehensive high schools. At the high schools, we added wellness gardens. At the middle schools, we're still working on adding those garden spaces, but we have some carbon sequestration forests. All those things were like capital improvement projects that were going on throughout the district. And that's great, those capital improvement projects. But when we were talking in our breakout session earlier, you can do all those retrofitting pieces that go along with sustainability, but the real power is when you can figure out how to get people to change their behavior. You really need people to figure out what it is that they're doing that they can change in order to make it better. And so we really focused on delivering lessons based on people, place, and planet. And we were really focused on environmental literacy for all. And all means all. So that means that we didn't want it to be just a class or a club that was happening after school. We wanted it to be a concerted effort that students were doing things that were people, place, planet based at every single grade level from their entire kindergarten through 12th grade experience. So we did that through a whole variety of project-based learning, through common formative assessments, through field trips and guided guest speaker series, a whole bunch of different activities and events that we were able to, because of my position here as the agent for science and career technical education programs, that I was able to help a whole group of people to like curate so that it made sense. Keep going. This is another example of what that might look like at the elementary school level. Again, focusing on real learning happening outside. The second one is middle school, sending the kids to camp and really solidifying that. This year is the first year that we as a district are committed to every single 5th grader going to camp. I'm super excited about that. This year it's a 1-day camp experience, but the plan is that next year it'll be a 3-day. That's a $1.5 million investment that when we first started this initiative, never ever in a million years with all of our competing initiatives would that have been the case. At the bottom left, we have career technical education programs that are focused on, commercial and residential construction, but we've modified those programs so that they have a green component. So the students are learning about energy audits and how to put up solar panels. Go ahead. When you're going through, what you'll find is that there's a lot of different opportunities that you didn't even think of. Pillar 3 is all about what your environmental and sustainability education components look like. And when he's saying that every single school has their own unique story, this is where every school really has the ability to put their own spin on it. How do they make it real for their particular site? Here we did, we were really focused on technology. And sometimes you think technology and environmental education don't have a place together. They don't cross over. But here, what the kids were doing where they were creating story maps using geographic information systems. So the students went out with the iPads, they geocached each tree that we had planted, and then they collected some data on the tree. So they collected things like the tree circumference, they collected shade circumference, and and then they also took some data on tree health. We're using that, they named the trees, we're using that in order to better work with ground so that we can have conversations about the overall health and wellness of the trees, as well as calculate how much carbon we're sequestering. So these are 5th graders that did the geocaching project. The next step is to have the 8th graders come in and do the and do the carbon sequestration calculations, so that we can monitor that over a period of time. There was a question that came up earlier, which is, what's an environmental topic that you're excited to like work on in your particular area? Here, air quality is a big one. And we recognize that by planting trees, we could have a direct impact on air quality. And so I'm looking forward to personally continuing that initiative forward and really working with city government to create something. We have a new piece of legislation out that might be a new funding source that goes along with where credits, and those where credits go along with logistics centers. We have a lot of logistics centers here. So if you want to see that story map, that's the link. But we're going to move forward because we're talking about green ribbon schools. Taking these ideas to scale, I think the one piece of advice that I can really give here is really thinking about inter and intra-departmental collaboration. There are a lot of people in a school district, and that means that we are a huge machine and we're a beast to try and change directions. So very rarely do people from business services talk to people from education services, and that's where the beauty lies. When you are a teacher, you should be talking to your ground supervisor, you should be talking to facilities, you should be talking to your custodial supervisor, the school board, the superintendent, the chief business officer, your energy manager. As a teacher or as a TOSA, those people are experts in the field. We're always talking about how do we get experts and our kids to talk to experts. All those people are experts. We also really needed to focus on creating responsive systems, and we're still working on that to this day. And the Green Ribbon Schools helps us to do that. So when you start your application for the first time, if you've never tried it before, my recommendation is start with pillar 3 and then work backwards, because if you start with pillar 1 and pillar 2, sometimes people get super intimidated by the application. It's asking you to calculate how many metric tons of carbon have you reduced as a school district, and people see that and they're like, okay, forget it, I'm not going to try this anymore. Start at pillar 3 and then go backwards. The people that will help you to do those things, you're like, nobody knows how to do that. Yes, somebody in your district knows how to do that. You know who knows how to do that? Facilities, the chief business officer, the ground supervisor, the facility supervisor. So it's really starting those conversations. When you see, and that, just like I was saying in our original example with the camps, we started off with the water bills. The teachers never looked at the water bills. Why would a teacher look at the water bills for the school? It doesn't even make sense. But actually, when you start looking at the water bills, it gives you a lot of questions. The same thing's true when you look at energy usage. The same thing's true when you start looking at waste, how much waste you're doing. So those pieces are starters for that conversation. A lot of times these groups, we're talking past each other because teachers were always thinking about, oh, the education component, and they're thinking about the logistics of actually running something. It's only when those two ideas meet that you can really do something really very special. And when you do that, not only will you create these responsive systems, and like he's saying, really having a team mentality, but it also opens it up to a whole bunch of different funding. So we've got additional funding at this point to do things with specifically nutrition services, because before nobody was talking about the farm to school program because farm to school targets nutrition services. But now we've got a funding source that allows nutrition services and education services to come together and really build some robust learning opportunities for kids. Nobody talked about the turf removal grants, because why would a teacher talk about turf removal grants? All those things allowed for additional funding. Be creative, go out there and have a good time, find some community partners. You'll be surprised how much people really want to help. And then my last piece of advice is have some grit, because you are, who is that, Sisyphus, like rolling the little ball up the hill and then having it fall back down and rolling it up again like a little dung beetle. That's what that's how I like to think of myself. And it can be fun as long as you recognize that it's going to be a little bit hard too, and you don't get too frustrated. Go ahead. I'm trying to stick to the 20 minutes, Nate. I really am. The more that we started working on things, the more that we saw that there was a lot of program development that was still available. So even now, the one area that we're really moving forward in is the program development around nutrition services, and really thinking about how these outdoor classroom and cafeteria pieces can come together. We've created these new procurement agreements so that the students that are growing produce outside, that nutrition services buys that produce from us, uses it in the school lunch, and then we're able to pay the school sites for that produce fair market value. you know, a check for $100 doesn't seem like a lot until it's time when you're giving that check to a school site. They're like over the moon. What do you mean? I can buy t-shirts now. They're so excited because a lot of the funding is really restricted. So it just adds a little bit to that. Also, think really big, because while the Green Ribbon Schools is a place to start, what we're really trying to do is we're trying to change the world. And that means that once you get started there, you'll find yourself in all these circles where you're talking to legislators and you're talking to a whole bunch of people that you never thought would be in the conversation about how to make it so that it's easier for schools to do this. In order for this to really change California, we really need every single school district to do the same stuff. And if we've done it in Rialto, everybody can do it. It's just a matter of figuring out how that system is working, and imagine the impact that we could have if we all work together in order to do that. Okay, go ahead, keep going. Sorry, on my little soapbox here. When we started talking about waste, and wellness and community, we also recognized that there was some community need. So in Rialto, we have coupled our green ribbon, and it's not necessarily something that's in the application, but it's something that stemmed from working through the application. And that's really the civic action component of it. We've got partnerships with Feeding America. We've started a food pantry, all based on this conversation around waste and what was happening in our school and really looking at data. And so it gives our students an opportunity to give back. They see, they see the need in the community, and they're able to see the community in a different light. And when we see ourselves as a part of the community, we take a bigger stake in what happens to the community. It's not just, well, nobody, I can't change that. This is just how it is. And some of those pieces are cultural pieces where a lot of times there are certain cultures where it's really, we have a huge faith-based culture, and in that faith-based, it's like, oh, well, the water's contaminated. That must be how it's supposed to be. You know what we're going to do? We're going to pray about it. And you know what? We should pray about it, but we should pray about it and we should do some stuff about it as well. Pray about it and talk to the legislators, pray about it and, put a little hard work in. So that's what we're trying to teach the kids. And, the Green Ribbon School really allowed us the frame to really think about these ideas in a very different way than we were thinking about them before. I think the next slide is my last slide. It's future plans. We are really thinking about creating a dining experience in all of our cafeterias and eliminating the disposable trays. That's our next step. Stuff that we really didn't think would ever really happen, especially during COVID when plastic came roaring back and everything had to be sealed up. But we're reopening that conversation about disposing those. Different student work programs, and just zero waste, net zero conversations just in general. Is it hard? Yes. Are there lots of naysayers? Yes. And that's what I'm saying with that grit piece. And so each year, just knowing that we come back to the Green Ribbon Schools and we kind of, encourage the schools that haven't applied to keep applying. It also keeps it on the district radar, because I don't know if your district is like ours, but a lot of times it's like, oh, something new and shiny, let's go over here. Oh, this is new and shiny, let's go over here. But the amount of stuff that you can actually get accomplished, because the system is so big in a single year, doesn't allow for us to shift all over like that. The Green Ribbon Schools, and thinking about your whole district and each school as an individual, as an individual cog in this wheel, allows you to keep a conversation going year after year about how you can get better in this particular area, who you can inspire that's new, because we've got lots of new teachers, new administrators, new district personnel coming and going all the time. And this is a sense of like continuity that you get with the Green Ribbon. You can keep bringing it up, more people know about it, etc. And I think that's it. We did a similar presentation at the Green Schools Summit. And so I have here my email address, but also if your background is for nutrition services, Rialto Nutrition Services is amazing. Christina and Fawcett, those are the second the second and third email addresses there. Love to talk about how we kind of revolutionize that. And then the third email address is Brian Montez. He's our grounds supervisor. A lot of times you get a lot of skepticism coming from your grounds department. What do you mean we're planting trees? What do you mean we're taking out grass? What do you mean? What do you mean? And he helps us to navigate some of those pieces. I also want to say that if you are chatting and you see Thomas Vosta on your list of participants, I would also reach out to Tom Vosta. He's a TOSA in our district, but he's guided his school, Morris Elementary, into like gold status, into doing amazing stuff. And that's it for me.
Juanita, every time I hear you, it's a fireworks show. It's like beautiful and energetic and amazing and a little bit overwhelming. So what I'd like to do now is just give everybody, oh, I see some applause emojis. I see some smiles on faces. Yeah, a lot of praise and appreciation for your leadership and your willingness to share Rialto's story. So many inspirational examples. I do want to give people just a moment to sit and reflect and maybe capture a note or two, because we're going to move on to some other topics, and I want to make sure that people have just a second to think. So I'm going to give a quiet moment for people to solidify any notes or maybe use the Jamboard to ask a question. And Juanita, we will take one question that I have for you that was in the chat. And then we'll move on to a lightning round. So I want to give a moment, reflect, get ready for the lightning round. Okay, thanks. It's kind of weird to do a moment of silence in the middle of a webinar, but I think it's really important to like capture some thinking. If you're still capturing your thoughts, feel free to keep doing that. Juanita, the question that was in the chat had to do with the timeline. When did this start? It feels like stuff like this takes a really long time, but it also feels like it kind of happened all at once. So you can just talk about Rialto's timeline. How long has this been going on? Yeah, just a little insight into that.
Yeah, so the California Math and Science Partnership Grant was in 2015, and that grant process was a 3-year process. So we really did some teacher professional development and all that stuff for 3 years and really learned a whole lot. But we weren't even thinking about green ribbon schools, or we weren't thinking about any kind of environmental literacy initiative. We were just thinking about strong science instruction. The conversation about green ribbon schools, I think, didn't start until 2017 or 2018. And then as we looked at the application, like I said, it really kind of guided our thinking. And by 2019, as a district, I think we won. I can't remember exactly what year it was, but I think it was 2019. And then a whole bunch of schools in our district were they were like, oh, they didn't know about this as a recognition. And so they started applying. Then there was COVID, and COVID was like terrible for everybody, but it was really a regrouping moment. But green ribbon schools allowed us to revisit that. As soon as we came back, people were already talking about green ribbon schools. Well, what about the stuff that we were doing, as we went virtual, and we asked our students to do this and we asked our students to do that. And so that was really helpful. It was a grounding piece for us, I think. And so it's back with a vengeance. So it has been a little while. So it doesn't happen overnight. But I think what I thought was so great about the application and that frame of thinking is that we were doing a whole bunch of stuff just sporadically because it was good for kids. The Green Ribbon Schools application allowed us to recognize for ourselves, oh wait, actually all these sporadic things are one initiative. And when it becomes one initiative, it makes it seem, it's a little bit easier to get people on board and have larger conversations about it, because you're not just talking about this singleton project happening at this one school and this singleton project that's happening at another school and this after school club. You're talking about all of it kind of together. And so the more schools that you're supporting, I think the more important that that is, so that you can get more people on the team. So before, you know, Miss Smith, I'm just throwing out a name here. Miss Smith was only interested in gardens. Now she's interested in gardens and recycling. Or, or the high school kids were only interested in solar panels, but now they're interested in solar panels and landscape architecture. It's like you recognize that you're all pushing this machine in the same way.
Great. Thank you again, Juanita. Hopefully, if folks had other questions, they'll stick around for the overtime of this session, where we can get into some smaller groups and have some more in-depth conversations. So we'd like to move into a little bit of like a lightning round. We have 3 presenters who will give some quick overview of resources that are available from state or federal programs that can help you organize or gather some of the resources you might need to move these initiatives forward. So our first presenter in the lightning round session is Julia Gowen with CAL FIRE to talk about funding for schools to improve schoolyards and improve a whole bunch of outcomes. There was quite a bit of money assigned by the legislature recognizing the challenges students face outdoors on their campuses and opportunities to do much better in terms of our outdoor spaces. So Julia, let me invite you to unmute and tell us a little about the CAL FIRE program.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Next slide, please. So hopefully at this point, most of you have heard about this large pot of money. It's a pretty historic event that we're in right now, that the state, which we've never seen before, has designated funds to green schoolyards. We have $117 million this year to hand out in grants to focus on green schoolyards only. And the purpose is, to improve and protect the health and well-being of the students and provide hands-on learning opportunities, increase environmental literacy, and to really help them just be in a healthier environment despite the hot and dry summers that we're having in that extreme heat. We have 2 grant types overall, and I'll briefly summarize both of those. And I want to, before I forget, say that we also have scheduled webinars on our grants, one this upcoming next Thursday evening and one Friday morning. So if you're interested in that, you're welcome to send me an email or go on our website or whichever way you want. But so we have two grant types. One is basically the whole 9 yards, is the planning and the implementation. And it can cover anything from, still on the other slide, but it can cover anything from, planting trees, removal pavement. We really want to help convert the blacktop and the impervious surfaces to nature. It could include outdoor classrooms, natural features in general for learning and recess. So we really want overall the campus, kind of like what Juanita said, right? Dream big. We want to change the world one campus at a time, basically. So we want to have more nature and greenery on campus, but our grants can also cover staff recruitment and training. It can support maintenance. It can support education. So the development of curricula that take that now more nature-based campus into the curriculum and really offer these hands-on learning opportunities for all grants. Generally speaking, for our grants, the eligible entities are cities, counties, qualifying districts, and nonprofit organizations. Unfortunately, there's no wiggle room there. That's put on us by the Urban Forestry Act. And as I mentioned, we have those 2 grant types, the implementation and the planning grant, and all those eligible practices that I just mentioned are part of the implementation grant. They're in a way not part of the planning grant, because the planning grant really only focuses on planning. It doesn't cover pilot projects or any kind of implementation. So while overall our grants cover this, and one would hope if they're applying for planning grant, they will take all these options into account, the implementation is not part of it. Next slide, please. To summarize the 2 grant types that we're offering. So one, as I said, is the implementation. It can be the whole 9 yards. You don't have to have a shovel-ready project. It can include all of the planning components as well as the implementation. We are still finalizing our grant guidelines, so the numbers, the upper and lower limits might change a little bit, but right now what we're thinking is to offer no more than $30 million per applicant and up to $2 million per campus that is included in the project application. So the advantage of the implementation grant is that it covers the entire project. You know you will receive funding for the planning and the implementation. The disadvantage is that the application process is more complex. So, you know, we're asking for a lot more information. We ask you to think about your project a lot more than for the planning grant application. Next slide, please. So planning grant, as I said, can include all of the planning, no implementation, no pilot projects, none of that. As I mentioned, the budget limits might change. Right now, we're thinking of limiting it to $100,000 per campus and up to $1.5 million per applicant. The advantage is the application process is a lot easier because we don't expect you to have as much information. You're receiving less money, you're planning only, no implementation. The disadvantage is that the funding for the implementation is not guaranteed. It's a completely different cycle for us. It's a different grant cycle. We don't know what funding we have in the future, but you will, at the end of it, have a shovel-ready project that if you can't apply for CAL FIRE funding, you're in a much better situation to apply for funding somewhere else. Next slide, please. And so, as I mentioned, the grant guidelines are being finalized more or less as we speak. We expect that the application portal be opened later this month. We have 2 webinars scheduled for next week, which should be on our website. But if it's not, you're welcome to reach out to me. It'll be Thursday evening and Friday morning. We expect that the application deadline will be somewhere around the middle of March. The planning grants are limited to 12 months total, and you would be able to apply in our next grant cycle, assuming we have funding, even if that planning project is not 100% complete. And the implementation grants will have to be completed by March of 2026. We understand that it's not a lot of time if you're really planning on removing pavement and doing, you know, the bigger picture, the higher impact projects, but we're limited by funding source. So that's not something we actually have control over. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I also know that I'll be in one of the breakout rooms, so I'll be there as well for more questions.
Great, thanks, Julia. We really appreciate it. One thing I love about this story was, you know, organizers were advocating for $50 million statewide on this project, and it went to the legislature, and the legislature's like, oh, hell no, $50 million isn't enough. And they funded it at a much higher level, which I think is great news and kind of shows some vision and inspiration just as a statewide system. So thank you to CAL FIRE for managing that grant and getting those opportunities out and providing the resources. So
and to add to that, warm and fuzzy, I don't know if you all have kept up with the recent budget cut that the governor and the Department of Finance have been doing. They have not touched the $117 million for green schoolyards. So while, you know, many entities experience reductions in their budget, this budget stayed the same. So I'm extremely happy about that.
Great. Thanks so much, Julia. We're going to move on to our next resource and our next friend. I'm super thrilled to introduce Seaberry from NOAA. I've known Seaberry for a long time. She coordinates just amazing programs that are often a gateway to Green Ribbon schools, provide schools with a lot of resources to get their initiatives together and to share a little bit about some of the grant programs. I'm going to turn over to Seaberry for a couple of minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, to tell us about some of NOAA's programs. So Seaberry, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for this opportunity to present. We have typically focused on environmental literacy through our California BWET program. We have a framework called the MIWI framework, which is the Meaningful Watershed Educational Experience Framework, which is essentially about integrating ocean and environmental literacy into classrooms, but also getting kids outside and having them engage with their communities, with their areas, with their geography in meaningful ways, connecting them to specific issues that might be impacting their areas, and then integrating into the classroom to help support those meaningful watershed educational experiences. However, this year, I have decided to kind of shift our priority. And instead of solely focusing on environmental and ocean literacy, I have developed a funding opportunity that focuses on climate literacy and climate change education. And the impetus behind this is I just feel incredibly strongly that this is a very pressing event, as we all know, that is coming quick and fast. And our next generation is maybe not getting the kind of support and education that they need in the classrooms, just due to lack of capacity and ability for teachers to start integrating this into their classroom structure. So this year I have revamped our funding announcement, and we're completely focusing on climate literacy. And it's really not about providing meaningful watershed educational experiences for students or teachers directly, but it's about building capacity in order to do that. So this is a funding opportunity that's coming down. Proposals are due on February 22nd. And we have up to $100,000 available per year for up to 3 years. And again, the idea is to build capacity either at a district or state or county level wide, building a framework for teaching about climate literacy, creating networks of climate literacy leaders, engaging leadership at the district level, at the county level with climate literacy, and really integrating it in a systemic way across multiple disciplines into classrooms, and really focusing on just climate change education. I'm happy to answer any additional questions that you might have in the chat room. And yeah, I would be happy to see lots of people apply for this. We also are trying to make a strong connection to like CTE, career paths, some of the existing frameworks that are already there, and how to integrate climate literacy into those existing frameworks. And then again, if you have any questions about our normal priorities, which are the meaningful watershed educational experiences for students and teachers, I'd be happy to answer those questions too, because that priority will come back around next year. All right, short and sweet, Nate.
Great, thanks so much, Seaberry. Super inspirational. I can see a lot of opportunities for districts who are trying to wrap their minds around how exactly do we support climate literacy. And a grant like this could really advance that cause. So thank you so much for having your finger on the pulse and bringing some resources to bear. I really appreciate it. All right, next we're gonna hear from Ronnie Jones at 10 Strands. 10 Strands is an amazing organization. Many of you are aware of their work or affiliated with their work, but 10 Strands provides kind of backbone support and, you know, the last 5 yards of the touchdown and kind of coordination among all of these efforts to create a system where all of these parts play together. One effort they've been supporting and really focused on is thinking about justice and equity in these systems, and recognizing that environmental harm and benefit is inequitably distributed. So to tell us about some opportunities with climate change and environmental justice programs, I'd like to turn it over to Ronnie.
Hi, thanks very much, Nate. I appreciate that. My name is Ronnie Jones, and as Nate said, I am with 10 Strands, and I'm the director of curriculum. And specifically, the project that I'm helping to support is the Climate Change and Environmental Justice Program. And you can read more information in the link that was dropped into the chat about our program, but just very shortly, we actually don't have funding opportunities, but we have some participation opportunities. So those of you in schools or districts or county offices that might be interested, we are going to be having an opportunity where teachers can help us to pilot some of these materials. So as part of this project, we are developing kindergarten through 12th grade curriculum, 15 hours of instruction at each grade level. We are using a similar model to Open SciEd to develop these units that will really focus on student interest, helping students to generate questions about an observable phenomena. And then in the end, really having some sort of action that they take at their school to advocate for change that will really support positive responses to climate change, or really increase justice within their communities. And so you can see the other community organizations that we're working with here, some of which you might be familiar with, that are working to write curriculum at these different grade levels. I will also direct you to the chat that if you have any teachers, or if you're a teacher yourself, or if you're an administrator and you feel like you would like your teachers to participate in some of our pilot programs that are coming up this spring, feel free to fill out the Google form that we have, submit your grade levels, your area of interest, what you might be interested in helping us with. We are looking for 3 to 5 teachers at each grade level who will receive a stipend to implement about 2 hours worth of curriculum. The stipend will cover their prep time, their professional learning time, any of the time that they spend outside the classroom to prepare those materials. We'll have a flyer soon that'll have more details, but we are looking for teachers all over California in every grade level to help us pilot and then give feedback on these initial experiences. And then coming up later in the fall of 2023 and the spring of 2024, we will also be looking for teachers who will do a larger field test of these units. And so that will be a much more extensive testing of those materials. If you're interested, please reach out. If you want to know more about our program, please reach out. But we're excited to develop these materials with a grant from the state of California in partnership with San Mateo County Office of Education. So join me in the breakout room if you have more questions. And thanks for Celeste for dropping those links into the chat.
Great. Thanks so much, Ronnie. I think this whole session, a moment of connection, inspiration of an amazing story from Rialto, and then some resources and networks to participate in to help advance your individual pursuits or your collective efforts in your districts hangs together pretty nicely. And I imagine there's a lot going on in your minds. What we'd like to do at this point is bring the whole group conversation to a formal close. So if people have to go, they can go. And in a moment, open up some breakout rooms where you can go and have, some more one-on-one or small group conversation with an individual presenter, or just listen into a conversation in a room. Before we go, though, to kind of close out the whole group, I'd like you to use the chat and either share an appreciation, something you appreciate from today, something you heard, something that was inspirational, or an intention. So like an I will statement. So either start something in the chat that starts with I appreciate or I will. Take a moment, think about something you appreciated or something you plan to do next, and share that thought in the chat. I'll give a couple of minutes for the ideas to populate in the chat, and then we'll talk about how to get into the breakout rooms for those follow-up conversations and questions people might have. Seaberry appreciating that other entities are getting into the funding game, that it's not just NOAA out there anymore, that we're seeing things in the state budget. Appreciation for that this meeting happened. Appreciation for connecting with others. That comes from Juanita. Juanita, we got a lot of people up here in the Bay that are working on reusables, lunch trays, durable, reusable utensils. There's something you mentioned as your next step. Maybe Nancy Deming will drop into your breakout room and share some of the good work happening out of Oakland, Alameda, Emeryville, and soon to be Fremont, our district up here, doing a lot of that as well. A lot of love for Rialto in the chat, just the approach, the equity, the justice, the thinking about environmental impacts on kids, inspiration for dreaming big. I see in the chat the importance of grit. Thank you. I give it one more moment for anybody who's still typing to share to hit enter and share their thought. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate all of this thinking, and a good way to kind of close out the whole group. So we're going to move into an opportunity for breakout rooms. The breakout rooms will be open until 5:30 or until everybody is gone. We don't want to keep our presenters longer. So you have about 20-minute opportunity in a breakout room if you'd like to have a more in-depth conversation. So in a moment, Amy's going to open up breakout rooms. You can choose to go and talk to Rialto some more. You can choose to learn more about the CAL FIRE Green Schoolyards grants. Maybe you want to check in with Seaberry about the Be Wet and climate change opportunity. or Ronnie about this pilot curriculum and thinking about environmental justice and climate change. I believe George is still around, so if you had a question for George, he might be able to handle it. But Amy, go ahead. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and give you a chance to open up the rooms and give folks a chance to join. I'll stick around here in the main room if you had a question about Cali or about the District Innovation Hub, but we do hope you get a chance to connect with your peers and colleagues on a topic that's of interest to you. Thanks everybody for joining. These webinars happen monthly. We'll see you a month from now on the next Thursday, and hope to stay connected. So thank you all for joining.
The room should be open. Are you guys able to join?
Yep, if you click on Breakout Rooms, you can see the rooms that are available and join a room. And if anybody needs help getting into a room, just voice it, and Amy, I believe, can manually move you into a room.